thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe and see you next week. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and today we're welcoming the incredible Eric P. Bishop, author of The Body Man, to the show. A book. Before we get into that, Eric, great to have you on here. How's life treating you?
You know, John, no complaints. I think the world's getting a little bit back more normal, if I could say that, maybe. And we got some concerts going. I was in Dollywood the other day. It felt kind of normal and doing well. No complaints.
I do want to talk about music with you because you are into the music and stuff like that in terms of the creativity outlet for you. But in terms of Dollywood, I saw today that Dolly Parton actually took herself off the list for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because she doesn't feel she was rock and roll enough. So that's pretty cool.
I saw that tweet actually myself, and you don't normally see people say no. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. Like you said, the whole idea of being told you're good enough to be something that someone tells you're good enough. It's like an author that, oh, you're a New York Times bestseller. That's when you've made it. Just because you're not on that list doesn't make you make it to that level. Or there's a ton of bands that should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a ton of authors out there that should be on every New York Times bestseller list, but they're not. But that doesn't deter them from being a great band or a great author and stuff. So
absolutely.
Again, I want to thank you for jumping on here. And before we dive into The Body Man, which for me, having spent 7 years of my life in the Secret Service, I'm very skeptical of stuff portrayed Secret Service, whether it's the West Wing on TV or White House Down or Olympus Has Fallen. They always portray the Secret Service as some of these idiots that run around from every nook and cranny with guns blazing, shooting, people dying, and it makes for great entertainment. But when I saw this book come across, I think a mutual friend, Jason Piccolo, you did some stuff with him, and I saw it. I'm like, well, man, if Jason's talking to this guy, the book's got to be legit. So I get the book, I read it, and I'm just blown away. For someone this is your first book, and for that to be out there like this, you took a huge risk by throwing yourself into this world, especially with the background that you don't have with a lot of these characters. How did you kind of get yourself into this world per se? Because you're not from a military background, not from law enforcement. How did you just do it?
So I'm a storyteller. First and foremost, I'm a storyteller. Which can be scary because a lot of these guys that I interact with, some of them are friends, I read their books. If they're writing about something, say for the military, they have that military background. I obviously don't. As we mentioned off camera, and I say it on camera, I'm a financial analyst during the day. I write at night. It's my hobby, my passion. I would love for it to pay my bills at some point in my life. But ultimately for me, it comes down with having a good story. And because I don't have that background, because I wasn't a Secret Service agent, wasn't FBI agent, any of that, no military background, in a way, my story has to be that much better than someone with that experience, because a publisher can sell a person and a book. They can't sell me if they're talking about a Secret Service book, because I've researched a lot, but I made stuff up. So I don't have that pedigree of saying, well, I served, I was with the Secret Service for 10 years and, I kind of know where the bodies are buried. I know the secrets. I do not know the secrets. I did have an agent that I knew who did read the book, nothing like on the record or anything, but instead it was, didn't punch any holes in it. Said it was, obviously I made some stuff up, but, was very complimentary. So that kind of helped. And I will say too, on the FBI side, a fellow author actually nominated me to take the FBI Citizens Academy. So I did awesome. That. I did that actually in Greenville, South Carolina, about 3 years ago now. And that kind of filled in some holes for me. I had actually finished the manuscript, at least a first draft, but before I took the class. But I went back and fixed some stuff after taking the class. And that was an amazing class. Just what I learned about the FBI and the respect. I already had a lot of respect for it, the organization, but seeing what the actual agents do, talking with them, spending time. I think because I was in the class and I was the author that kept raising their hands to do everything, but after the couple classes, they just would be like, Mr. Author. And so when the bomb tech guy came in, they said, you're putting on the 80-pound bomb uniform. And I'm like,
Yep.
cool. They made me crawl, roll around in it, look like an idiot. And I loved every second of it. I got polygraphed. We did a good, no good shoot. We went out and did some
Yep.
shooting, the simulation, not a real shoot. But yeah, it was an amazing experience, and it was a scary experience. Because with little kids, one of the classes was all about predators, the internet, the sex
Yep.
industry. I knew a lot about that because I had researched it for an early book, but I didn't really know as much as I knew after I got out of that segment of the session. So that was scary, scary part.
I like how you threw yourself in there to kind of get the idea of it. The idea when you work with numbers and the way you do, is there any correlation between the way you deal with numbers and the way you deal with words or letters? Because it seems like patterns and like, are you able to kind of figure out when it came to writing? Because I mean, I can only imagine the original draft of this was probably a lot longer. So when dealing with numbers and the endless nuances of numbers in terms of writing, is there any correlation there between that?
No, I think if there's a correlation, it's probably with knowing not the numbers as much. It's more of attention to detail and trying to get things right. Because with my day job, it's close enough doesn't count it. When we're doing budgets or we're doing stuff that I do, they don't want to just say, well, just just guess. So I think that's what correlates to then writing a book. Is I know it sometimes I have to guess because I don't have top secret clearance. I don't have the a laundry list of people I can call. But I'll research as much as I can, and then if I have to make it up, man, I know people are gonna pop holes in it if it's not sounding at least pretty accurate. So I try to make it up as good as I can. So I guess that's how it probably just the attention to detail is probably what comes in with my day job versus the night, doing the writing at night.
What I love about the book is that the in the first feels like the first paragraph you get introduced to this body man, who for the reader, if you haven't read the book yet, I highly suggest you read it. But he's basically the guy that guards the secrets of the presidency, and you meet this guy very briefly. You learn about his watch, everything specific, and then all of a sudden he's abducted, and then the book kind of starts there, which is insane because it felt like I knew everything about this guy to the first paragraph, but then obviously he's abducted. You're like, well, shit, there goes the rest. Like, what's going to happen now? And
Exactly.
so those little details and stuff like that, I love the fact that it's very detail orientated, but the human aspect you bring in there, like these aren't perfect characters,
Mhm.
and the writing. Listen, I grew up reading all the Tom Clancy stuff and Clive Cussler, and there is a place for those books. And I've lived this world, firearms, training, all this stuff. I don't want to
Mhm.
read 2 chapters on a pistol. I don't want to read about the nomenclature of a rifle for 3 chapters. Like, give me the characters, and you have that equal balance. And so, I guess the first question in putting this book together, did you have that in the back of your mind where it's like you got to have the best of both worlds here?
Yeah, kind of, sort of. And just take a step back from what you said about the details. I learned something, and I won't name drop who it was, but it was someone with many years of experience in the military, a special operations type of person, and a very successful writer, New York Times bestseller. And I was talking to him one time, and he said, "Look, you've got to get the details 100% right, or don't put the details in." He said, "So for me, with my experience, I can tell you what a Delta guy or what a SEAL will have for a weapon and probably be accurate."
Right.
He said, "You might not. So for you, it's better to say gun versus, well, he had a Glock 19 or he had whatever. Sometimes I do put specifics there. It's easy to figure out what the Secret Service uses and what the FBI uses.
Yeah, it's all known. It's out there. Yeah.
Right. There's government contracts you can look up and see who we're paying money to for all the
Right.
weaponry and stuff. But especially anytime I wrote this is actually my fourth completed novel. I wrote three to start with that didn't go anywhere, and I'd love to do something maybe one day, but they're kind of my apprenticeship of learning what I was doing. Um, but those did have some more military in it, and those are the things, because you can get those right if you weren't in the military, but it's a lot harder. Which was my concern with when I wrote The Body Man, because I was concerned, Secret Service agent might pick this book up and just chastise me up and down how horrible it was. But I also viewed it as, there's not a lot of them out there that know exactly how the sausage is made. So I'm hoping if they read them, they'd be kind. Versus, there's tons of military people out there, tons of people that have served
Yes.
our country and are not in uniform anymore. So there's a lot larger of a scope of people that could tear apart a military novel if I wrote, something that I really wasn't qualified to write.
I don't think people that read stuff just to nitpick, like this isn't an autobiography. Like this body man, this character, or Eli Payne or Cat Stone, they're not real people. So for people that nitpick the details and stuff like that, I find they're the same people that are going to do a negative Yelp review because they're having a bad day and whatever. Or it's those type of
Yeah.
people. And I'm curious, every time I talk to an author, how do you deal with that criticism? Because there could be good criticism, which can affect you different ways, and obviously the negative criticism.
hmm
Are you able to block that out? Because the fact you've got a book published, that you're well ahead of the curve of anyone that wants to write a book or even attempt to put a book out there, and the
Right.
fact you are here, part of me thinks you're kind of like, you know what, this is my story I created. It might have parts of truth and based on some similar
hmm
stuff, but this is my world I'm living in. This is my baby. So how do you kind of deal with that? The criticism and everything.
So the famous thing is they always say you better have thick skin if you write, and that's true. And I think I do have thick skin, but at the end of you all also are a person, so you definitely don't like to hear someone just tear apart what you've written. I'd say from the get go, I'll say it this way: I write these books. I mean, like you, I wrote, grew up reading Tom Clancy. I grew up reading, as I got older, Vince Flynn was a huge
Yes.
influence on me. Daniel Silva, just tons of. And actually, I really before all that, I really read the classics, Shakespeare and Dickens and Victor Hugo. And but as I got in writing it, and as I started writing what I wanted to do, one of the early things I kind of figured out is I don't write for anybody else. I want people to enjoy my stories, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, if I write something and I'm happy with it, if I write something and it makes me laugh, if I write something and it just takes a crappy day and it makes it, smell like roses, then that's my joy getting out of it. Now people giving me praise, which I've gotten a lot for this book, it means so much to me, but I almost didn't expect it. I wanted to write a book that I enjoyed. When I finished The Body Man, even the early draft, I said, "Man, I got something special here." And refined it for a while, started giving out copies to some folks I knew, and then the feedback I got immediately was like, "You've got some. You hit the nail on the head on this." It all came together, and I think that was a combination of those first three books, kind of learning what I was doing, because in a way, you're always kind of emulating something. So my the way I look at it, I was kind of emulating, in a way, Tom Clancy. But Tom Clancy doesn't just give you a watch, he gives you instructions on how you build the watch. I didn't want to write with that detail. So as I started reading, later on in college and my early 20s, was Vince Flynn. And I think Vince took what Tom gave, which was a great story, and compacted it. So that ended up being more of my model, was Vince Flynn. Um, and really how he put his stories together. And so anytime I get a compliment pointing back to either of those authors, yeah, it makes you feel pretty special. It makes you feel really good.
I was curious the editing process for you. You mentioned as long as you're happy. In the first couple of drafts you sent to the editor, when they send back their review and what they think should be said here, is it tough to swallow some of that stuff where it's like they don't know I'm the author here, or like how do you deal with an editor that thinks this should be in here, but the part should be staying, it should stay out? Like how do you kind of navigate that world there?
It's fortunate. I had two editors. I had an editor before I got the book. So one of the advice I had got from an author friend was, before you try to sell this, get an agent, get a publisher, whatever route you go, have a professional editor go through it. So I did hire someone, a gentleman out of Hawaii, actually. And he was really kind. He fixed my grammatical issues. That's my weakness. There's some people that can put something together and they can kind of do everything, and do all of it fairly well. I think I can tell a story really well. Grammatically, can I get it all correct? No. That's why there's editors, and you either give them money, or if you have a publisher, the publisher pays an editor to fix their client's work. So I paid for an initial edit, and then I still had problems, getting interest, which I had a couple authors read the book and they're like, we're going to eat our hat here. We don't know why people aren't buying this book. So it took about a year to get someone, and then Force Poseidon. I guess it was a little over a year now that they gave me the 3-book deal. So I actually do not have an agent. I actually ended up going with a smaller press that didn't require an agent, and the agent was a hard one because I really thought I'd get one, and I think I never really counted it up. I have a spreadsheet somewhere. I did a couple iterations of going to agents, but easily it was over 100 people. And they didn't all ask for full or anything. Probably dozens asked for full or partials. But that process was frustrating. And I know it's frustrating for agents too. They get so many submissions, and they have to weed out the crazy people basically, and they have to go through so much. But the feedback I was getting from agents wasn't consistent, which is why ultimately I decided to say, well, is there another writer friend had suggested, why don't you look at a small publisher versus why don't you look at someone that's not requiring an agent? Because this book is that good. It's as good as anything that's out in the market. Why agents are turning you down or passing it up, it's not making sense. You're just not getting the right agent. Well, I tried for a year and a half, and I just said, I don't want to have the body man sitting on my hard drive for the next 5 years while I try to get an agent. So I said, do I want an agent or do I want a book published? So that's kind of what brought me to go with a smaller publisher, and which I was really grateful I did. So they then did an edit as well. By that point, I think it was much more fine tuning, adding little details, fixing things, because I had a lot of the grammatical stuff fixed, which there's still things that sneak through, of course, but that was more. So I didn't. You'll hear sometimes books get rejected back. The editors is like, no, this is horrible, or this part's got to go, or you got to switch this. I didn't have that experience. I think because I had kind of fine tuned it so much, and I also had other authors read it. Interestingly enough, and you mentioned it, the first chapter where you start with the body man, which that wasn't the first chapter years ago. When I first had first chapter I started writing was in Central Park. Not it wasn't based there. I was actually sitting in Central Park writing it. But it actually started with Merci, the female assassin in the book. It was actually her chapter, which got shifted several chapters out into more of a flashback. But so yeah, a lot of that. By the time the publisher got it, a lot of that stuff that a regular editor might do with a publisher had kind of been fine tuned out and worked through.
It seems in a world that's so starving for a creative outlet and people to put this, when Hollywood and TV shows are always remaking the same stuff or it's all rehashed stuff, an idea like the Body Man it's just so unique.
Mhm.
And it's like the first time I watched National Treasure. It's like you wished all this stuff was really happening. Like, is this really this incredible world you build?
Right.
So as you deal with I'm not gonna say rejection, but the year of searching for publishers, for people that don't get as far as you got, and their stuff is still on a laptop, like what advice do you have for them that are still kind of, I want to be a writer. I love this thing. People love it, but I can't get any respect. I can't get any publishers. Like, what's your advice
Yeah.
to those people?
Yeah, no, great question. And I was fortunate early on. I was able to do a bunch of media and do a bunch of podcasts. And I want to make sure every time, even now when I'm doing them, I try to speak to that person that was me for so long. And the advice is really simple. You don't quit. You have to figure out what you want out of this. Do you want a book that's going to get published? Some people just want, and the first step is you have to complete a novel. You have to get that first draft done, and most people never will. So most people that start a book will never finish that first draft. And so what I try to encourage people to do is get to that point where you finish that first draft. Doesn't mean it's going to be the best book. It might have to get changed. You might have to hire an editor. You might have to do all kinds of things. But for your own sense of accomplishment, and this is what I've tried to teach my kids too, is stick to something, finish it. Now, maybe when you finish that book, you'll realize, or people will read it and tell you it's no good. This can't get published. Well, then you got to start another set of thought processes. Do you go back and fix that? Do you write something else? So that'll kind of spider web out for you possibly. But if you don't finish that first draft, if you don't stick with it, then there is no more conversations about how do you get an agent? How do you get that? You have nothing to present. You've already you've given up. You've quit, and that's the it's something I've mentioned and I've put in some of the stuff I've written is I'm sure someone else probably said it originally, but I always attribute it to Brad Thor, who's #1 New
Yes.
York Times bestseller. The only difference between a published author and an unpublished author is the published author never quit. And I really took that as my mantra, John. So, and I try to do it with most of my tweets and stuff I put on my website is, don't quit, never quit. You miss every pitch you don't swing at. So if you want to write a book, well then sit down and write a book. And that's what I did. I was, my first book I finished when I was in 2014. And I had a litany. I have on this computer that we're talking, I have two folders. One's called books, which is the Body Man's on there. The three other books I finished are on there. Three other books I've started are on there. Well, I also have a folder called old books. And it's basically 20 files of books I started from starting basically in my first year out of college. And what I learned in 2014 when I finally started that first novel was Eric was good at starting something and Eric was terrible at finishing something.
Interesting.
So in 2014, my goal, which I wrote a book called Vengeance, my goal was to finish a book. Of course, when I finished it, I thought, well, I'm the man, I'm going to be successful and someone's going to pay me and I'm going to, Netflix, everything's coming. 7 years later, The Body Man came out, which was my fourth book for my debut novel. So, I got a little lesson in humility and how life really works. But I learned that lesson back in 2014 of don't quit. And when no one was interested in, no agents were interested in that first book, what did I do? I wrote the second book. When the second book didn't get any interest in agents, what did I do? I wrote the third book. And it wasn't until the fourth book that I put something out there that people that read it started to say, you got something here.
Right.
And I think whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, whatever your occupation or whatever your profession, especially if it's creative, you've got to put yourself out there and you've got to put in the hard work. The other thing I will say too is what I realized at the time in 2014 is I was married, I had two kids, I had a full-time job. So to write, I had to do something and I wasn't going to sacrifice my family time. So what I did was I cut television out of my life. And so from June of 2014 until September, that was the time period it took me to do my first draft on that first book. I wrote from 10 o'clock at night until I finished. Some nights it was midnight, some nights it was 4 a.m. I didn't watch any television. I had one night a week that it wasn't necessarily Sunday, but it would be my Sabbath of, okay, I could just binge watch something. I think I watched Breaking Bad at the time. I was binging Breaking Bad one night a week and drinking something
Yep.
to relax. But that mindset that's how I got that completed novel. I didn't, I couldn't quit my job. I couldn't just tell my kids, hey, dad's not going to talk to you anymore and sit in a room and write. I did it when everyone went to sleep. So everyone goes to sleep, 10 o'clock, I'd sit down, that was dad's time. And I had to write a book, which is kind of similar to what I do now, except I do have some time on the weekends, free time now without the kids that I can work on the weekends.
People that follow the podcast know me. I have this goal to write a book. I have this character in place and all this stuff, but I found I can really only work if I'm at my desk with a cup of coffee and I'm not someone that can write on a plane while traveling or in a hotel room. I mean, I'll take notes and stuff like that. But when
Mhm.
you mentioned being in Central Park or I know you post stuff on Instagram and stuff where you're running out on the deck or
Yeah.
all this stuff, and you're able to go around. Is that something you have to kind of build into like your schedule, like you said, or if you always been able to someone to kind of work, start a chapter here, finish over here, like you see your creative outlet seems very like strong, and it's kind of
Yeah.
cool to see you're able to kind of continue a story in one state, finish over here. It's really cool.
So I finished my first, so the Vengeance I was talking about, novel in 2014. I finished it in Yosemite. Probably, and I said this to a friend recently, and they again kind of gave me grief because they thought it was a negative comment, and it's not a negative comment. I said that'll probably be the greatest memory for writing I have in my life. Is I finished that first novel sitting in Yosemite. I wrote for about 8 hours. I had planned out. I had a business trip, and I was gonna stay one extra day to write. And I kind of had gotten that point in September. I think I finished on the 21st of September of 2014. But I had like 3 chapters left. And so I wrote those last 3 chapters in Yosemite and I actually took the characters, Troy and Kate, I took them in my epilogue for that book. I put them in Yosemite in the spot I was sitting on their honeymoon. And I told that last epilogue there as I looked out and saw everything. Yeah, I got done. I cried. I smoked a cigar. I screamed out loud. Fortunately, there's no one around me. I probably
Right.
scared the deer and the mountain lion that was about to eat me. But to me, that's not a negative though. It's like that it was like when I was 19 or 20 years old, I went to Europe for 3 weeks between my freshman and sophomore year of college. And in 3 weeks, I saw 7 countries in what most people don't see in a lifetime. And I was telling this to my kids recently. So that was the greatest trip of my life. And I said, and that's not a negative statement. Like, yeah, I'll go on some great trips and I have some amazing bucket
Yeah.
list things I want to do. But I knew at that moment when I was there, I'll never have a moment like this in life where I get to do this for this period of time with these people and see these sites. And to me, that's a blessing. That's not a negative at all. And same with stories. So I've been able to, sorry, long answer to say, I've been able to, as I've been on the writing journey, to just wherever I am, focus on, hey, I need to finish this chapter. I need to start a chapter. And I can just block out what I need to block out. And I go back to my head of what story I'm wanting to tell and dream it up and create it and put it down on the laptop, whether I'm sitting, sitting in Yosemite, sitting on a plane in a coffee shop. I finished one of my books, my second or third, I can't remember now. That's terrible. My second book, I finished it at the lodge, the lobby of Great Wolf Lodge up in Charlotte. My kids
Oh
are up
wow.
there. I put them all to bed, and I was like 2 chapters left to go, and I went and sat out in the lobby till 2 a.m. around the fire and just wrote, and it was awesome. I finished it. I was like, sweet. So I kind of made a pact with myself at that point. Don't finish a book in your house, which I've done since then. So I'm close with Breach of Trust, the follow up. I'm hoping this coming weekend. I don't have my kids, no custody this weekend. I've got a bunch of words, so I don't know, but my goal is to finish it. I won't be doing it from this chair. I'll either be sitting up in, might go to Charleston. I might just go up to the mountains here, but
Yep.
I'll just be around nature, sit there, have a cigar with me close by, finish that book. I'll cry again. I'll be excited. And then the next day I'll say, okay, I got to tear this crap up and start editing it and make
Right.
it readable.
Is it distracting for you as a writer and trying to be creative when the world around you, say a pandemic or a war in Russia or rising gas price, whatever the issue is in the world that's affecting everyone, is that a distraction to you when it comes to your writing and building these things?
That's my
Yes.
distraction.
Yeah.
That's the only distraction I have,
Yeah.
honestly. I can
Phones
turn off
are
everything else. This one I can't. People that are watching this or know me say, yeah, you don't never shut up online. That's correct. So I have to put that sometimes in the other room. Problem is I use it for research. So I'll be writing on my laptop where I'm talking to you, and I'll have the phone next to me and I'll be like, okay, what does the Secret Service use for a weapon? So,
right.
Google and a few things I can find. But yeah, no, it doesn't. Although I'm trying to think. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think during I guess during the last 2 years, I've pretty much wrote Breach of Trust. I'll be done with it here pretty soon. I started another book. I'm about a third done with that. I put that aside when I got the book contract. I want to go back and finish that one this summer and maybe shop that around to some publishers or an agent as well. But yeah, I think in a way, John, with everything, with the world going to hell, with everything going, being able to sit down and write a story is therapeutic.
Got
It kind of takes you away from all the bad stuff in life. It's a distraction in some ways, but it's a good distraction because it's creative. And there's a little part of me as I've been writing recently, you're thinking, are we about to get nuked? Does it even matter if I finish this chapter? I mean, but at the end of the day too, I can't live my life in fear of wondering. That's how I've dealt with the pandemic. And
right.
I'm fortunate I've lived in the South where,
Correct.
and fortunate in the sense of, and I know a lot of people, and I know it's a very politicized thing, but where I say I'm fortunate is we've not had the draconian restrictions here other people did have. So it's felt a little bit more like normal. Like I said, I was in Dollywood this weekend, yesterday. We were there for 6-7 hours. I saw one person with a mask. Of course, we're outdoors. All the rides are outdoors. Everything we're doing is, we didn't go inside any shows or anything. But there was one person with a mask, and they literally had it sitting down here and everything. And I wanted to just be like, hey, cool. If you're going to wear that, God bless you. Put it on correctly, or don't put it on at all. I mean, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So, but it was very normal though. And that was kind of that's where I'm hoping we're getting kind of into more of a normal, because I don't think anyone thought 2 years later we'd still be talking about lockdowns and masks and restrictions. And you got you got your negative COVID test to go see a concert or something or whatever, and you're like, wait, what? So
You mentioned being outdoors and hiking. I think that's for most people, including myself, it's a great way to kind of clear my head and just get the space away from the city and
yeah.
technology. But you also in your book, in your thanks and your end, you talk about the impact of music, specifically the band U2.
Mhm.
And so, in terms of the actual writing process, do you have music playing in the background? Are you able to multitask like that? Like the role of music in your life, how does that affect the writing process specifically?
Great question. So in the last couple books, it's hit or miss. I was sitting here writing well, last week and a half ago, and I was in a Dave Matthews mood. So I
Wow.
just, there's a couch on this side that you can't see, and a big flat screen TV over on that side of the room. And I'll sometimes sit in the couch or in the comfortable chair over there. And I was just starting to write, and I was like, I need some background noise. So I just put Dave Matthews on and shuffled, and I turned it down pretty low. I didn't want it loud. There's some nights I'll write to the Rolling Stones. Some nights I'll write to Eminem. There's some people I know that write scenes based on, or they need that music to help with their scene. Like if they're going to have action, they're going to go really heavy with music, or they're going to have something, they're not going to have Yanni playing. I will say, yeah, you mentioned Bono. So I've sent Bono a book. So Bono, if you're watching this, just at least acknowledge you got it. I'd be, super happy. But I don't write to U2 very often, probably because I listen to them more when I'm not writing. Maybe that's why I never, I might be Freudian. I've never really thought about that. I will say there's I believe they're Christian. There's a band called Thousand Foot Crutch, who,
Yes, yes.
when I wrote the first book, Vengeance, I was listening to them like exclusively for a couple months. And there was actually scenes and chapters in the book that to this day, if I go to look at that chapter, that song will pop back in my head because it was almost choreographing those action scenes for me. And they're really heavy, really a lot of guitar, and the bass is hitting you hard. But man, I love that I could hear that song and it would bring me back to that chapter I wrote, which was really cool. So my son's really big into music. He started playing the guitar. He actually got a Les Paul guitar from my aunt last year, which is
Nice.
hanging in his bedroom, and he pulls it down and jams on. He's more classical or acoustic, but he likes to jam out to the electric and pick up riffs here and there. And we were talking about it recently. He just said, music's a part of my life, Dad. Ever since he was little, I've had music playing in the background for him, and kind of like me, he's all over the board. We got a Spotify premium plan a couple of months ago, and we both got like these warring playlists going, and a couple times he'll be playing something. I'll be like,
Yeah, that's
oh, well, that one you might need to take off your playlist there, buddy. I don't know if your mom knows about that one, and you need to delete that one. So, um, but yeah, so it's amazing to see him and the impact now. And he, as of right now, I want to be a musician, Dad. And of course, I lovingly tell him, find a job that pays the bills, and I will encourage you to be a musician. But you're not living with Dad till you're 40 to try to get this career started. Because if
right.
I was living off my writing, we would have died a long time ago. Starvation is a horrible way to go. So, um,
I want to circle back to the body man. When you
yeah.
create characters like Eli Pate or Cat Stone and other characters, the body man himself, when you complete the book and you get the reception you get from people like, oh, these characters are great, do you ever go back and be like, man, if I did this a little bit differently, maybe this character could stand out more? Or when you put the body man together, are you thinking book 2, book 3 in this series? Do you have that in your head? Or because you have to do specific things to these characters
Right.
that that not only serve the story you're telling this book, but if they why are they still alive or why they do what they do, does it lead to something else further in another book?
So I don't know if I did it as concerted as I wish I did with the body man, as I try to kind of have some stories there and leave some stuff out there that will open up for future books. I'm doing it more for breach of trust. I'm kind of learning so to answer your question, when I finished Body Man, I thought about it in the terms of more than one book, but because I was getting no interest from agents and I didn't know where the process would go, I ended up changing the last chapter a little bit just to kind of open the door more than it probably was. I was thinking one book initially, and then as I started writing it, I'm like, well, this would be a cool character. So Eli and Cat for sure. And actually, and without giving up spoilers, where I ended the Body Man and where it picked up, I really then saw that, man, I can take the body man, and I have a clear line of where I want to take the body man, which is what I'm working on for Breach of Trust. And also the third book, I've kind of got a high level idea. I'm kind of putting Easter eggs in Breach of Trust for a third book. But Eli and Kat, I could see starting their own series. So I actually have a book started for them where I'd like to, so almost where I'd like to branch out and take several of the characters, as well as like Merci, female assassin. She's hardly in the body man. And she's one of the characters that early on, one of the writers said, that's a badass character. You need to do something with her. What's her backstory? Because John, my answer at the time was no clue. I didn't have a clue what her backstory was. I've created her backstory since then. I know exactly why an attractive woman decides to kill people. And I've got a really good reason why she decides to kill people and who she kills. So yeah, so as I've kind of gotten through the process, yes, I've kind of then thought, okay, if I can bring this to 3, 4, 5 books. But the only thing I'll say from that is I don't think I want a Vince Flynn type Mitch Rapp character, or I don't want to write the character for the next 20 years of my life.
I like the idea that these characters can kind of come and go in different stories, and you don't have to waste pages talking the background because you've already met them, and they can kind of, oh, there's the body man, he's back out. Or I like the way this book is very conducive to that, because it's like, oh, that assassin's badass. I hope I hear from her again, and maybe she does, maybe she doesn't pop up, but you're doing it the right way. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think so too. And the reason I liked too the concept behind the body man is it wasn't one person. It was a role. And to me, that was kind of, so I've kind of set up the apprentice, the new apprentice in the Breach of Trust. I've kind of already started putting things out there for what that person might be able to carry a book down the line as well. I could also do backstory stuff. Like I had to figure out, where did this role start with? And so I decided to make it during Kennedy and Monroe and everything going on during that administration. I've actually written a chapter with the first body man. It's on my computer. Probably should print it off one of these days, so it's not just, although I have it backed up in a few spots. But yeah, I kind of like the idea that I could bounce around with that, because again, the only caveat to that, I say, if someone were to pull up with a dump truck and dump a pile of money in my driveway, then you might hear me say, boy, I'm so happy to write the body man for the rest of my life. But I doubt that's the case.
And even those authors or directors or bands, they still like to do something different through write a different album than you did before, or write a different story. So that creative outlet is just so cool. It's for, again, like I said before, we are so starved as humans in terms of real original ideas, creative ideas. Yes, I'm well aware of the Secret Service and all that, but to create something like the Body Man, it's just so cool that I'm just blown away that it hasn't been done before. Like maybe
I'm scared that it has been, and I just read it somewhere, and it's got stuck in my brain. And I pulled it out years later. But I don't think so.
I look for this stuff, and again, where the fact that it's crazy that Eric P. Bishop, is the one that brought this type of character in that world that's very specific. And for you to do that in this day and age where people are literally redoing redos, dude, hats off to you, man. It's just awesome.
Well, if you want me to, and I've said it before, so I'm sure someone's seen it that might watch this, but I'll tell you how I came up with the concept. It's a quick story.
For sure.
So I was doing a cleaning job. So we're probably going back about 5 years now. I was doing a cleaning job. I think I was writing my third book, second or third, somewhere in that, I think third. And I was Friday nights, I'd go up and do this cleaning job, boring, mindless work for 2.5, 3 hours. And as I was pulling into the place, it was a fire sprinkler company. As I was pulling in that night, I'm like, I need a new idea. I need a new story. And so I came in, turned off the alarm, and it wasn't a voice. It wasn't words. It wasn't anything like, I'm not crazy, but I had this thought run through my head, and it said, there's always someone who knows where the bodies are buried.
Yes.
And I was like, what the hell is that? You know, what okay. And my first thought was, what am I going to write, a mafia story? I'm not Italian. I can use my hand and go, hey, but no, it's not going to work. So I was like, what in the world? So I answered my own question. Who would know where the bodies are buried? And my brain kind of answered and said, duh, the body man. And I'm like, that's a cool term. And then I remembered something. I had heard or seen a video clip of, and so this is a true story. And I've sent President Obama a book. I hope, and in the letter to him, I said, I want to get a copy of this book to this person I'm about to tell you about. But so I saw this news story, and it said President Obama had this guy that works for him. who's a real guy. His name's Reggie Love. I know a Secret Service agent that knows Reggie, and Reggie was dubbed the Body Man by the media. And so that was my catalyst to all this. That's where it came from. And so I heard a little bit about Reggie did, but I never researched it, never looked into it. From what I could tell, he was kind of his right-hand man that held his BlackBerry, got him his smokes when he needed it. Probably if he said, Reggie, I want that thing in the store, Reggie walked in with the money and paid for it. I don't know. Maybe he did something a lot more cooler or classified than that, and I didn't want to know.
You're pretty spot on with it.
Yeah, so he's in my brain, it was a glorified assistant that's there to take care of the needs of the principal. And I said, well, that would be a real boring book. And that's where I thought. So I had 3 hours, 2.5 hours that night. I said, what if the Body Man was actually job? What if they were Secret Service? But what if their job wasn't to protect the person? What if their job was to protect the office? And my brain was like, ooh, I haven't heard of that before. And that's where it came from. And not exaggerating it, in 2.5, 3 hours that night, the book that you're holding now, I came up with the high level of what that would be. I knew where I wanted to go at the end. I knew where I was going to start. I had no clue in the middle. And then I just, I got to make up some good stuff here. And it just kind of fell into place. And I didn't then write the book for like a year and a half, 2 years, a year and a half, I guess, is when I started it. So I kind of let my mind chew on it. I would take notes. I had a notepad. It's sitting up there probably. If I'd make little notes of, make the Body Man this or make that. And I had a lot of time kind of in free time when I hike and walk is when I think about a lot, or take a shower. That's where my two creative moments where I'll come up with the concept. But yeah, so I owe it. So like I said, in the letter to President Obama, I said, I really would love to get a copy of this to Reggie Love, because Reggie is, whether he never know it or not, he's kind of the guy that gave me that idea. So, and it's funny, we're talking today and I can't show it, but I sent out 7 books to 7, to President Biden and 6 former presidents.
Yep.
I got 2 letters today back. I won't say who they were from, but I got 2 letters back today. First time I got a response. I sent the books a month ago. And the one letter is actually a personalized letter. And it had a letter also from the director of communications with it as well. It said, Eric, well done, blah, blah, blah. You cannot put this letter online. You cannot talk about who this letter is from. You can't use this to promote the book. But I will say, I will cherish that letter forever, because it mentions direct things in the book. It's signed by the president. I have a letter from from President Bush 41 up in the sorry, my cell phone's going. Sorry. I have a letter from President 41 on the wall currently from years ago, 2000. I wrote him a personal letter, and it was super sweet. So I'll get to put this letter up there as well. And I hope I hear back from all of them. The second one I got today was more generic. It was a picture of the president signed, and it was a little bit more of it had no personalization, but the one that's personalized, I of course then sent it to some friends to say, check this out. And they were like, my mom was like, I'm gonna cry. And I'm like, go ahead. That excites me. And that's also history. So, there's 320 million people in this country. There's only been 46 people that have signed. Taft was president twice, I believe. So
right.
We only had 46 men that served as president. One day we'll have a woman. So to have a piece of history of him, a letter from one, and now 2 letters from presidents, man, that's a blessing. That's an amazing blessing. So as awesome. A history buff, that makes me super excited.
Is it easier for you to create a protagonist or the antagonist? Like which you drawn to more? What's easier for you to concoct a story about?
I'd say the protagonist is easier, but the antagonist is more fun, because you normally can take the gloves off. The protagonist is typically the good guy. He's going to live in this world that has some rules. And he can get as close to that line as possible and maybe step over it a little bit and still be considered the protagonist, the good guy. But it's the villain that can live in anything they want. And actually, it's one of the compliments I got from the Body Man early on, is I had a character named Peter Kasha. Peter, not giving away, but Peter's clearly not doing what he should be doing.
Correct.
But people pulled for him, especially towards the end of the book, where I got people saying, I want Peter to succeed, or I want him to, and they said, if you can get the bad guy to be liked by the good people that are reading your book, then you hit something. And so that to me is kind of the more fun is to write the bad characters, and you can make them very one-dimensional. Bad guy wants something, gonna
Oh,
shoot someone,
terrorist.
gonna do whatever. Exactly. Every Islamic person's a horrible person. All these horrible stereotypes that are just full of shit, honestly.
Yes.
But how can you make a bad guy do something that you morally don't agree with? But it's kind of like talking about Merci, where she plays a very small role in The Body Man, and I'd like to tell her story later. How do I take someone that their job is to kill people, but make the average, church-going American out there say, "You go, girl. You should be doing that." You got to be a little bit more creative. You got to be, and that's kind of the fun part of it.
I
So
picture her as a victim. Just how you wrote her, I pictured her as a victim of whether it's sexual, physical, mental assault from a male person, and then she kind of basically takes out the trash, so to speak. It's just really cool. Like you can have so much fun with that character. The
I could tell you offline, but yeah, you
Yeah,
probably might be onto a little something.
yeah. In terms of when you come to writing a character, are there other pieces of you, Eric, that you kind of intertwine in these other characters you make up? Like, is there an attachment you have or a nuance that what a character does that maybe you do and you subconsciously put it in there?
Absolutely. And I won't say which ones, but and it's not just me. It's one of the cool in Breach of Trust, I might have too many name drops in there of people I know. I did a bunch of contests too, so I had to give away. I actually found this one. I was giving away a really cool contest to give like the epic death for Breach of Trust. And I realized as I was giving it away that it couldn't be a man. Well, I've already built up this contest to be anyone can win. So what do I do? Well, I got to kill two people now. The really epic one's a woman. A.M. Adair, who's an author, actually won it. And so I've got her death scene already done. I haven't even I haven't wrote the chapter before or after, but I've got that scene done. I told her months ago. But yeah, that to me is to be able to,
Awesome.
well, to be able to include people. I know before I had a book out, before The Body Man came out, I was a cameo character in one of my friends' books, one of my fellow writers' books, and it made my day to see my name in there. Like, man, I'm in a book, and then I was in several acknowledgments. And I know just from a fan perspective, because I might be a writer, but at the end of the day, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the Jack Cars and the
Yeah.
Kyle
Well,
Wilson, Daniel Silva, and just so many, Mark Cameron, so many of these amazing writers that I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of them too, which is pretty humbling. But yeah, to be able to be included. So if I can take someone's name and use them, so I do it a lot. There are definitely made up names for sure. But I do try to also intersperse real people, even if it's just using their name, not their characteristics, to put that name out there because that means a lot to them. And
yeah.
I'll ask them first, hey, do you mind if I use your name? 'Cause some of them have died. That's an easy one. I can just put their name in there because they can't argue with me. Then I can make them a bad guy if I want because you're dead. You can't really, just roll over a little bit, but you
Yeah.
can't do much besides that. But I know from a fan perspective, to see my name in there means a lot. And just people that I've put in. So, talking back to The Body Man, Peter Kasha is a real person. That is not his name. I met him through a whole circumstance of events. That's a long story, and it's a beautiful story at the end because I got to meet someone really cool. But it's an alias for this person I met, and I was like, "Can I use it?" And they're like, "Absolutely." And when he read the finished product, I got such a sweet response that it warmed my heart to say, "Look, I made someone's day by just including them in my book." How cool is that? I'm going to have to put names in my book. Why make up 100% of the names? Why not use some real people? Why not use some real stories? I've got permission from a friend who was in the Operation Iraqi Freedom. I got permission for him to use a story. I actually recorded him, so I've got the full detailed story. He told me a couple names I can't include, but that story is going into Breach of Trust this weekend. And it's a real pivotal, cool story. And he said, put it in the book, it will live on. And it's one of those stories people are going to read and be like, dude, that's a cool story you made up. And it's like, I didn't make it up. It's a real story. Someone told me this story and said I could put it in the book. So that's cool when you get to do that kind of stuff.
Before I let you go, obviously you're on social media, Twitter, Instagram. The Body Man is out. I was able to get mine off Amazon. I know you have a website, but is there anything specific you want to tell people where to pick up the book, stuff like that, and upcoming stuff you got coming on?
Yes, appreciate that. Yeah, so right now, because with a smaller publisher, I don't have the distribution. So unfortunately, I'm not in the brick and mortar stores. I'd love to be at Barnes and Noble and Walmart and Target. And one of those bucket list items is I want to walk through the airport and see my book
Oh,
and
that'd be
walk over
awesome.
there with my black. I keep a Sharpie in my pocket and just sign all the. I don't care if the person behind the register gets mad at me. I'll deck them and just I want to sign my books. That'll be so cool to I see Jack Carr or Brad Meltzer do it every
Yep.
now and then, and I'm like, you guys, you're killing me. But so yeah, for right now, Amazon, The Body Man, it'll come up. The Body Man, Eric Bishop, I'm there. Barnes and Noble online, I'm there too as well. Pretty much if you put it in there in Google, you're going to get some hits. There's some indie stores that have it. And but yeah, my website is ericpbishop.com. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I even have, to my kids' chagrin, I have a TikTok account. I post cooking my Blackstone grill stuff on there, so I put something on there, so it's pretty stupid. But yeah, the social media has been good though. It's really helped open up some doors, just meeting other authors. The biggest kicker, which I had mentioned earlier, is it's a time dump. So it's really helpful connecting. Clearly we've met through Jason, through social media. But it's one of those things that you do have to try to keep in check as much as you can, because it will eat up your writing time.
It's a necessary evil, I
Yes.
think. If you actually are working, you need it for information. I totally get it, but it is always fun to go outside with a cigar, some whiskey, sit by the fire, and you just hear the owl going or the coyotes. Like that is the best therapy out there. So,
I built a fire pit this weekend with my kids, John. You're more than welcome. Come hang out. I got Blackstone Grill. I'll cook for you. Fire pit. There
it's
we go.
awesome. Well, thank you for this, Eric, and I wish you all the success for your book and your upcoming
Thank you, John.
projects. And next time you want to come on here, just let me know. We'll get it done.
Love to do it. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you.